I have been working on income inequality in China for more than 30 years. 30 years ago, China was in the transition from a planning economy to the market economy. So there were a lot of research issues and economic problems for scholars to think about how to solve this problem. So from then, I became very interested in studying income inequality in China, try to compare inequality in China with that in other countries, particularly in some developing countries, try to find out what is the unique features of changes in income inequality in China in the futures. I thought that it would be very important for China, also for the people in China, to become interested. When we come to inequality in China, there are two major problems we think about. The first problem is rising income inequality in China in the last 40 years. The second problem is rising the wealth inequalities in China in past 20 years. You see, wealth inequality and income inequality interrelated each other. Big increasing income inequality will make the wider the wealth inequality. On the other hand, wider the wealth inequality also lead to the rising income inequality. So, if we want to solve the problem of the rising income inequalities, perhaps we should think about how to reduce the wealth inequalities. I presented the papers on the wealth distribution in China in the past 30 years. This is joint work with my colleagues, Dr. Zhan Peng and Dr. Xiaobing, and Dr. Shi Li and Dr. Yanjun Tao. They all make great contributions to this work. They did an excellent job for these papers. In my presentations, we have several key findings. The first finding is that in past 20 years, very big increase in the wealth accumulations of Chinese households in both rural and urban areas. The wealth growth is much faster than income growth. The second finding is that if you look at inequality of wealth, it has been on the rise for all the times since early of this century. So if you look at Gini coefficient of wealth distributions, it has been on the rise. The third finding is that the wealth growth is faster in urban areas than in rural areas. That means the gap of wealth between urban and rural areas has been widened. So if we want to reduce the wealth inequality for China as a whole, we should focus on reducing the wealth gap between urban and rural households. Another finding is that the wealth income ratios is rising. Also, in long term, wealth inequality will continue rising in the future, just because income inequality is the driving forces for rising the wealth inequalities. Another reason is that China has no specific policy for reducing the wealth inequality. So perhaps in the future, China will introduce some policy to reduce the wealth inequality. We are looking forward to that. If you compare China with other countries, with some developed countries like American and the UK, you will find there are some difference between China and other countries. One big difference is that wealth inequality have changed very quickly in China than in other countries. Even some developed countries have high the wealth inequality than that in China. But China has a faster rising wealth inequality in the last 30 years compared to developed countries. To reduce the wealth inequality in China, I will propose some policy proposals. I think China should follow some practice of the developed countries, like most European countries, by introducing the property tax and the inheritance tax that can be works in reducing income inequality and wealth inequality as well.